Hi, this is Shira Rubinoff. I'm here with Insights in Tech. I'm here with Ori Eisen. Ori, welcome. Pleasure to have you on the show.
Thank you for having me, Shira.
Always a pleasure. Ori, please introduce yourself to our audience. Tell them a little bit about what you've done and what you're currently doing.
I'm currently the founder and CEO of Trusona, even though the team calls me the VP of whatever it takes to win. I've been 19 years in our industry, started at Bank of America many moons ago, then moved to VeriSign, American Express, left corporate America to start a startup called the 41st Parameter. After 9 years there, it was acquired. I tried to retire, as we were just joking, but here I am back. I'm 5 years now in Trusona, trying to get rid of passwords all over the world.
Excellent. So, Ori, in the last number of months, due to COVID-19, we've seen the world literally be turned upside down on its head in many different ways. And the world had quickly had to pivot to remote work. So, organizations had to quickly lock down in ways that they may not have done so before, as well as be on high alert for new type of cyber attacks coming at them and specifically at their employees. And right now, we're entering a new phase where the country is starting to open up a little bit, and more work may not be completely remote. We look to the future of work, and our new reality is going to look a lot different than what we're used to in the past, and we may have predicted for this year itself. So, Ori, what do you see being organizations' biggest challenges that they may have to face shifting from complete remote work to a mix of both remote work and in-person work?
That's a great question. Historically, where most of us were in an office, in a building, on a network, the jobs of security people, you could say, was inside the building or on my network or remote. And the remote people were far and few in between. Now it's completely shifted where most, if not all of your employees are on the outside of what you thought was the inside. So the rejiggering of systems, networks, rules, first of all, has to change how we think about things. So for example, if before you said anybody who comes into the network from the outside, it's okay that they'll have a two-factor process that is a little bit clumsy or difficult, and you could justify it in your head. There's only few of us who go through it. I think right now you have to rethink it because, employee experience is something that is super important to productivity and everything else. The second half of it is I don't think we're going back to the office anytime soon. Because even if you could, in many states, parents don't have schools or programs to send their kids to, so they'll have to work from home. So that changes how we think about what is the office. I mean, for years and years, we thought that's where business is and that's where you do business. But I think we'll have to rethink that and really change how collaboration works, how teams work together, and that delineation between inside the work and outside will almost evaporize in a world where you connect everybody remotely.
That's such an interesting point that you make. What does work really look like? What does the office look like? I think that has to deal a lot, as you said, with people's mindsets and how the shift is going to be. What's acceptable and what's not? What have we been used to? And what do we see ourselves moving towards? And again, obviously, a lot of culture within an organization. There's a lot to be said about in-person meetings and face-to-face. But what does that mean for an organization having to pivot in a cyber world from a security standpoint? Now it's looking at every point of entree from an employee as that could be the weakest link where they can be penetrated as an organization. So if we're shifting now from this mindset of remote work, we're locking down our entire perimeter to maybe a mix of something that might be a little more in person, whether it being in a coffee shop, whether it being just light meetings rather than in office. How do organizations really lock down their infrastructure in ways that they feel that people will embrace it in a secure way?
Yeah, in a very interesting way, I'll start with the culture of working remote and then we'll weave it into the security.
Yeah.
Many experts for years told corporations, hey, your employees will be more productive or really work more hours if you let them work from home because they don't have to commute and there's all kinds of other noise that happens. And kind of no one listened. And now after we tried it for 3 months, everybody sees that really it is happening. So it's almost like it was good to let the world try this, and it's the same with security. We talked about zero trust for years and years and years, and people talked about it as a concept. It's not a concept anymore. Literally, everybody who's connecting in is remote. They're coming from the outside. So you trusting what you thought was trustworthy before actually should be erased, and everyone should be thought of as connecting from a coffee shop or from a remote. So you have to invest more into endpoint security to know who is connecting. You have to invest into MFA that I hope would be passwordless, because otherwise we're giving all this traffic to the bad guys. And employees will tell you, I can use it or I can't if it's too cumbersome. And the third is the monitoring of what's going on. If you're looking for inside threat, you can no longer only look for it in systems that are considered inside. Correct. Because everybody, including the people who are working in the accounting department, in your admin of databases, they're all connecting to your remote like a hacker would. So the entire strategy of how we look at perimeter has to change. Zero trust has to be raised up in awareness. And again, we have to not say, oh, this will only be another month or two and we'll go back to how we were. I think this is the future, and we have to think about security this way.
I couldn't agree more that zero trust should be at top of mind. I talk a lot about cyber hygiene within an organization, and one of the pillars of it is zero trust. And I think, as you said, organizations are starting to realize that that has to be embraced, and it's not a nice to have, it's a need to have. There's no way around that. So really important piece that you raised, Ori. Thank you for that. So Ori, what do you predict the new reality of our workforce to look like within the next year or two, taking into account of what we just discussed of what will the new way of work be, what could it be like in the future, but in the next year or two, how do you think organizations are just going to come together and really behave or show their employees what the new work will look like?
Like with every curve, some will be early adopters, some will wait, and some will be laggards. But overall, if this situation will continue for the next 12 to 18 months, I see the majority of organizations going through a learning realization that we first move everybody home. We now are taking a deep breath. We're going to set perimeters. Then we realize there are no perimeters. We're going to set MFA for everybody. Then we're going to realize, okay, that may not work for everyone. And everybody is going to go through this up and down until, I think if you take 12 months out, most organizations will be set up correctly to work remote. What do I mean by that? The use of video conferencing will be optimized. You'll have people setting up water cooler rooms that Zoom, for example, will not only use for what we're doing now, but it will be used just for people chatting and kind of bringing back that office atmosphere, because people do crave social interaction, so it will not be business only. And if airplanes will start flying again, what we will see is the real thought process of, do I really need to take this meeting? Meaning, do I really need to be there in person? Because now we would have gone through 12 months of training or so of, wow, I can do a lot with sitting at home, being on video, writing emails, being on Slack, without being in person. So I think budgets will be rethought, CFOs will be smarter. And from a security standpoint, if you thought before that protecting the outside is a budget that, again, is only going to 5% of the people, you'll now have to think about it again and tell your board and tell your CFOs, I'm sorry, now 100% of us are on the outside. So we need to invest in all the layers that will allow me as a security practitioner to protect us, even though we don't have the concept of a physical office.
No, that makes a lot of sense. Or let's touch upon just for a moment on insider threat. You touched upon it a moment before. Obviously, there's insider threats where people are looking to cause damage, and that's, we deal with that with zero trust as one of the ideas around that. But let's talk about the negligent insider threat, where somebody doesn't realize that they're sharing information where they shouldn't be. And that is, I believe, going to happen a lot more as we're dealing with this remote work, or the light remote work, or the maybe in-person coffee meetings of being able to log in, or where they have to be, VPN in, or however they want to get into the organization and deal with data. What would you say to organizations is the most important thing beyond zero trust to deal with insider threat within the organization from employees who are not necessarily looking to cause harm, but are just going about their daily life? And again, they're being pulled at from many different distractions if they are at home too.
Yes, that's a great question. It circles back, and I'll go a little bit technical because this is an important point to focus on. In the old world of sitting in an office and taking an RJ45 or Ethernet cable, sticking it to my laptop, sticking it to the wall, for the most part, you're pretty secure from someone eavesdropping unless you have malware on your computer. So again, if you're a security practitioner and you're thinking everybody's connected, even if it's on the local wireless, there's very little chance of eavesdropping, of siphoning, or session hijacking or session replay. It's just not an attack vector that is easy to do, from miles and miles away. Today, if you're sitting at home, this conversation we're having right now is not going on a wire into somebody's router, into a switch. It is going over the air and through my ISP to you. Yeah. So when we talk about insider, we have to split between the insiders who would have done the same thing while they're still working, connected to your wall, right, and insider threat that is now coming just because the very people are using a network that is coming from the outside, and the risk of malware listening to everything is just higher by design. So I would just say this to security practitioners now detecting, was it my employee, meaning the insider who committed this, or they've just exposed their credentials or exposed what they're doing, their behavior, to someone who's monitoring them. That would be the new normal, to really know, was it insider or not?
Well, that's a very important point. I think that people are starting to think outside the perimeter, really of what was the way of thinking before and what the way of thinking is now. So those are great points you've shared. Ori, thank you so much for your time, and look forward to talking to you again soon.
Thank you for having me, Shira. I love your transmissions and podcasts. Please keep doing it.
Thank you.